Hey guys, it's Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! Okay, so the most popular video for this week was hands down this What's Wrong with Current Popular Video Game Feminism. And the comments sort of derailed into a bunch of people arguing about anti feminism. I'm not going to address that because I don't feel like that's productive. I think that if someone's going to be opposed to something, then they're going to be opposed to something, and that's an emotional reaction. Not identifying as a feminist and saying you're an anti-feminist are very, very different things as far as I'm concerned. But it's such an emotional response, I think, that there's no point in even attempting to convince. I just have to set a better example of an alternative form of video game feminism criticism and hope for the best. And that's where we bring ourselves today, because the other feedback I got is a couple people said, "This is great, but I'd like to hear more about what you don't like." And at first I was like, too soon, too soon. I'm not sure we're ready for this, but I'm gonna try because I know you guys don't like dodging questions, and it's a legitimate question. And there's no point in doing this weekly thing, this weekly feature, if I don't tackle the tough stuff, right? So I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try to do some alternative feminist criticism of games. I just have a request before we start. Please don't make knee-jerk comments before you've watched the whole thing, because you'll miss important context. I'm considering this a major test about whether we can talk about these issues like grown-ups. I don't want to see it blow up, because obviously people are watching, and it's okay to disagree as long as you're disagreeing from a logical standpoint. What we tend to get in these things is a lot of emotions. Now, I want to say off the top, this isn't a question of what I like or I don't like personally. I don't want to be the arbiter of video games. I love video games. I want to promote video games. I don't like focusing on what's not good about them, but I am a game reviewer and I am a game critic, and that's part of my job. For the record, I don't play games because they have a female lead. It's not part of my decision making. I don't think a female playable character makes a game by default better or more feminist. There's a lot of games I personally like that I'm going to criticize, because I felt if I did like them overall, I can say, oh, I just have to go there, guys, because no game is perfect, right? No one expects games to be perfect. I think it's okay to think something you love has flaws. And I think any criticism of games has to come from people who actually love games. What I've been understanding is people want the good and the bad, not just the bad like we've been getting so far. So, a little background on my approach for people who are new to this channel. I'm a sex-positive feminist, meaning that sex workers, and porn aren't inherent issues for me. I'm also a media critic, not a sociologist, so I approach games as games, not social commentary. So the things I'm going to flag are indications that a developer got lazy and used a stereotype instead of creating an original, consistent, complex character. That's important because some of the things I'm sure people are going to go, how could you say that? But please, again, hear me out. Don't knee jerk. There are reasons for this, and a huge part of this is to make you think and show that we can have these discussions without everything turning into a flaming, fiery wreck with death threats. And I'm sure there's going to be some trolls trying to stir shit. But that happens. And that is, I don't think that's a fail state for this. Trolls are trolls. There's enough commenters on my YouTube channel and on Twitter that I know are mature people. So I think maybe this is a tiny bit too soon. But on the other hand, I think, well, if we never attempt this, we're never going to show we can do it. So yes, risk, but I'll get to why I took that risk at the end. Let's go forward. Obviously, there is absolutely nothing inherently feminist about Grand Theft Auto, because the subculture it draws from is about as terrible to women as you can get. This is so obvious and so deliberate that there's no point in dwelling on it, and I don't know why people bother discussing this franchise from a feminist perspective. It's not it's intended to be revolting. It is. And so fine, let's leave it off the table. Done. Saints Row, on the other hand, why is Shandi's head cut off? Damn it, Shandi. But Saints Row has become an interestingly feminist series, on the other hand. But I might do a character spotlight on Shandi, whose head is cut off here, so I'm going to hold off on that. Cool? All right. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay. The first point I want to make is often feminist cred is confused with LGBTQ cred, meaning lesbian, gay, transgendered, bisexual, queer. Lots of things, some of which have nothing to do with each other, hence the problem with this whole catch-all term. And while there's a lot of overlap between feminism and, I'll say, queer analysis, they're not the same thing. Did Mass Effect take major risks by including a gay romance option? For sure. But they also created a game-defined perfect woman in Miranda Lawson, which is a huge no-no by feminist standards because it shamelessly asserts the beauty myth. And I'm not sure what Mass Effect was trying to do here other than fan service Yvonne Strahovski fans, because you never, ever define the perfect woman if you're trying to be what is, generally perceived to be progressive, especially when in Miranda's case, that perfection was determined by a man. Now, why is this a problem? Because to determine the perfect woman assigns value judgments to height, weight, bra size, hair color, so on and so forth. And who's to say a blonde is better than a brunette, especially since Miranda's hair color changed during development? Yeah, Miranda's father is a narcissist, but the very concept of the perfect woman is completely counter to body positive feminist thought and common fucking sense. In Mass Effect 3, BioWare gave a slight nod to the fact that it's a stupid concept, having Miranda say, nobody's perfect. Now, obviously, Mass Effect had a lot of awesome female characters from a feminist perspective. Liara, Tali, Samara, Jack, Edie, and Femshep herself, just to name a few of the awesome characters in those games. And they obviously hugely override one character that's meh, I think a lot of fans too would argue that any one of these other women is a more quote unquote perfect woman than Miranda, which is the entire fucking problem with the concept of a perfect woman. I'm gonna leave that there. Feel free to think about that tangent for a while. There's a lot to chew on. But I want to move on to the fact that even games written by women can sometimes have issues from a feminist perspective. And I'm doing this to show that, feminism is something that's a discussion of culture. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Uncharted franchise. Huh? Yeah, I know. Poking sacred cows, right? But these games started off real rough with the female characters because they draw from that tradition of those old adventure serials. I mean, this is an old format. And, Elena on the left here, Elena, was pulled right out of that, Lois Lane. There's a bunch of other characters. The spunky girl reporter. Don't make Spunk dirty. Don't make Spunk dirty, monkeys. But okay, we got the spunky girl reporter. But then we have Chloe that's just a textbook femme fatale. And we've got the what some people call the virgin whore dichotomy. I mean, we're going right back to the pulps on this thing. I mean, the Spirit comic books was doing this in some ways more elegantly than the first Uncharted game did. I mean, Chloe, almost called her Claudia, because voiced by Claudia Black, Chloe didn't come into it in the second game, and that's when things started to kind of improve, but the character concepts themselves were just taken right from that format. And I think that both these characters were saved by the performances of the actresses who played them. I mentioned Claudia Black, and then Emily Rose was Elena. And so on the surface, thanks to them and, Amy Hennig's writing, they seem super uber feminist. But if you dig deeper, they're stock characters. And by the third game, they fix the problem. Both have a lot more depth. Both have a character-driven purpose as opposed to just serving as a foil to Nathan Drake. But it's important to track this sort of progress instead of just getting stuck on either what they were at the end or how unimaginative their starting points were. We have to be fair and balanced and actually examine these things. Like I said, take the good with the bad, and that sometimes means taking the bad with the good. Moving on, pissing people off, the Tomb Raider reboot. It sacrificed a lot of what made Lara Croft a very feminist character to make her more likable, whatever that means. And I have gotten in trouble at so many services for trying to make this point because it's like, no, you can't criticize a female writer. Well, the writer doesn't set the characters or the basic plot points of the game. That's the developers. It's the design directors and all that stuff. And I think this is something that's little understood in video games. And I get that this is, irony, a survival tactic on Crystal Dynamics' part because games weren't selling very well. And, don't get me wrong, a lot of people, male and female alike, love the new Lara. I've seen the cosplayers. I've had discussions with people about this all the time. But we can't get around the fact that male characters don't have to be calibrated to be likable. But Lara does. So, from a feminist perspective, that's an undeniable red flag because it's a double standard. But, okay, like I said though, I get the sense that this franchise had its back against a wall. So, I've, gonna go easy on it. What I've seen of Rise of Tomb Raider, I have high hopes for because the series is selling again now, so maybe we'll get a less generic version of Lara in the next game because Crystal Dynamics has said it's still the same character. They've just gone back to an earlier time. Now, again, I've brought up these last two examples of Uncharted and Tomb Raider just to caution people that female writers are no guarantee of feminist content. And I want to stress again, the writer of a video game isn't in charge of the characters or plot. They have to make the best with the components they're given, and sometimes it isn't enough. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful that, game companies aren't just hiring female writers as a sort of shield. We have to be prepared to treat female writers equally to male writers. And if something is an issue, something is an issue. We'll leave that there. I'm just delaying because I'm nervous about the next part. This is going to be the real test. Yeah. I've taken a lot of crap for pointing out the issues in The Witcher 2. And Triss's head is just cut off on this thing. This isn't me this time. I'm not going to get too far into this because, well, I'll get to why. But if you want to do a test, if you want just a basic idea of what the issue is, Google Triss Marigold with your safe search off. And you'll get a bunch of nudity mixed in. I don't want to show much because I don't want to have another not safe for work title. I guess this is not safe for work now. Oh no. Okay. So now, for comparison's sake, do the same thing to any Dragon Age character, female Dragon Age character, even ones that are wearing less in their base costume than Triss. Even this fan mod couldn't bring themselves to make Morgan completely naked. It's an indication of what the internet, like, I'm still going, no boobs. Where are the boobs? Where's the nudity? Where's the mods? Whereas the Nakeds, I mean, you have sex with her in game where it's not here. And to me, this shows a difference in how fans relate to this obviously sexy female character and what they choose to focus on. So, just to be clear, finding a female character attractive is fine. Wanting to see her naked is fine. But when wanting to see her naked becomes more important than her story, personality, or role in the game, that's not so fine. Hopefully that makes sense. You have to treat even fictional women in terms of, again, this is feminist analysis. You have to treat them like whole people. And their sex and sexuality is only one part of that person. And when we see the response to a character begin to override character and story for hooray for boobies, then we have to wonder if we've struck the correct balance. Now, fortunately, these issues didn't repeat themselves in The Witcher 3, which is why I didn't want to dwell on 2. The Witcher 3 only had minor things that were a problem from the feminist perspective. So I don't want to rehash the stuff that got fixed. That's why I sort of glossed over that. And before we go forward, this isn't about what's a better game overall. It's just about the depiction of female characters. And I'm very, very cautious here because Witcher fans are, let's say, excitable. We ready? We're going to do Mountain Monday. Breathe in. And out. Okay, what are the lingering problems? I mean, one that just struck me as completely unnecessary is the reference to a Redanian soldier raping for his country in a card game. Seriously, a card game. Could you imagine sitting down to cards, like, with me, it's at the cottage, and hey, mom, here's a rape card, Like, what? Like, but, okay, in fairness, the major improvement between The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3 is in The Witcher 3, rape, other than this sort of casual, weird thing, is clearly depicted as a crime of violence, not a crime of sex, which oddly enough, a lot of people actually complained about, and this shows just how screwed up the dialogue is on this subject. To me, and based on my training, including, rape crisis stuff, if a game's going to show the rape and murder of anyone, it should show the reality of those crimes and not pretty it up and make it seem like, 50 Shades of Grey, oh, she kind of no, rape is ugly, rape isn't pretty. And games have to reflect that reality. So there were also some false feminist moments in The Witcher 3. Like Vess telling Vernon Roach he can't tell her what to wear after he points out that her quote-unquote uniform is ridiculous. Here's the thing. Vernon Roach is Vess's commanding officer. He can totally set uniform for his soldiers, and her refusal is actually insubordination. So that moment was dumb. So the meticulous realism of the male character's armor goes out the fucking window in this character. And this is a very important concept. It's couched in sort of cutesy language, but this is something that applies very well to video games because what most analysts do with a character like Vess is they just show her out of context and go, oh, she's got a plunging neckline. That's bad. Not necessarily. I wouldn't say this about the sorceresses in The Witcher, and we'll get to why in a little bit, but the reasoning basically comes down to something I call the He-Man and She-Ra test. I've heard this from somewhere. I don't remember where. So I would cite it. I would give credit, but I don't remember where I've heard it. But it's really cool. It isn't a perfect tool, but it's a damn sight better than just picking on female costumes in isolation. What it means, essentially, the He-Man and She-Ra test means it doesn't matter how little a female character is wearing, provided she doesn't look out of place next to the men fulfilling similar roles in her world. So Soul Calibur, Street Fighter, and even Conan's Hyborian Age pass the He-Man and She-Ra test. The Witcher fails it with Vess. In real life, she can't even do a Bro 5. If she raised her arm, she'd flash a boob. It's a ridiculous outfit, and there's just no getting around that. Whoa, don't worry. It's not what you think. It's not what you think. What I'm going to talk about here is the issue of moralizing in some story arcs. Little cutscenes that attempt to force the player to think about things in a certain way, which wreck otherwise amazing plot arcs. I'm an anomaly. I know people hated this storyline, but I thought the story of the Bloody Bear and his wife and daughter was gloriously complex. And I'm trying to avoid spoilers, which is why I'm being vague here. So you guys who know what this story is know what I'm talking about. If you haven't played the game and you don't know, just go along with me, okay? The issue was not the story itself, which I thought was very well told. The issue was, at the end, the game told me what to think about it. It didn't allow me to make up my own mind regarding the morality of a very complex series of events. And of course, at the end, the game encourages you to sympathize with this guy essentially over his wife and daughter. I didn't agree, and I would have been fine with not agreeing. I would have been, wow, what a complex, amazing storyline if it hadn't told me what to think right at the end. And then there's the unfortunate fact that women of color are relegated to the role of succubi. On the bright side, the complaints that there are no non-white people in the game aren't true, but I'm not sure this is an improvement. And it's just, again, it's the issue of compounding stereotypes as opposed to having enough characters of color that they're not all wedged into one role. But again, a little bit of support here. The complaints that there are no non-white people, proof. This is clearly, I don't know, maybe she's kind of purple, but, she's clearly darker skinned. So these are two sort of instances where the criticisms of the game, the popular criticisms of the game were uninformed. At the same time, now that being said, I think The Witcher 3 gets it more right than it gets wrong. And this is why I'm asking you guys to hold off on your comments until you see the whole thing. Because I'm going to defend the game now. Ciri and Yennefer are incredible characters. And with Ciri, we finally get to see Geralt interact with a female character who isn't an enemy or a potential sexual conquest. And with Yennefer, there are even negative consequences for being too liberal with Geralt's penis. And personally, every time Yennefer gave Geralt shit for screwing around, it was great because it was believable. I think Yennefer is the best new female character to enter gaming in quite a while. She's an iconoclast. She's reckless. She's heavily flawed, but she's flawed in a way that's consistent and makes sense. She was an amazing addition to the game because even though I didn't think she was the best partner for Geralt, just because she got him into way too much trouble, she's an absolute delight as a rich, developed character because she was willing to say yes as well as no in various circumstances. And then with the addition of Yennefer, there was almost like a domino effect that happened. Triss finally grew a backbone where Geralt was concerned. And she finally replaces the job she lost in The Witcher 2 for being the Witcher's whore. What did the Witcher's whore mean? It meant that she was in love with him and therefore had sex with him. And that was an issue in the second game because, not because people were saying it. That's not it. People are assholes. It's because the game wouldn't let me smack the shit out of those assholes. So, Triss isn't the leader Yennefer is. She's too much of a pushover. She's too nice. She's sweet and kind, and that's okay because now the game has both. Triss and Yen complement each other extremely well. And to digress, for the record, I love her alternative outfit, even though it's not at all practical. And this is when I said I was going to talk about the fact that plunging necklines are not necessarily all bad, just in the case of vests. Sorceresses have glamour spells in this game that explain how clothes like this stay in place. Again, it's not about whether or not they're showing skin. It's whether showing skin makes sense for the character. Overall, in The Witcher 3, the use of things like whore and whoreson as insults are also way down. They're still there, but they're not used to excess. You're not constantly bombarded with them. So that's a plus. And also, big thing, there are older female characters with amazing character designs and storylines. So overall, and this is again why I wanted everybody to just not freak out and not knee jerk when I did the bad first, I think it's important to point out those criticisms. But I think overall, it's important to reward the fact that they improved. There is development, and that's all we can really ask for. For me, like I said, I don't expect perfection. As long as the trend is toward improvement, I'm happy. So, good job, CD Projekt Red. So, unlike some analysts who end up on national TV shows, wink, I can name 3 sexist games. But obviously, as I've showed, it's not that simple. In order for our criticisms to be useful, they have to be fair. And hopefully, I've shown, please, that issues in a game can be identified without crucifying the game. And I want to be clear as well that things I've identified don't turn men into sexists. We're not dropping words like pernicious or anything like that. No media can do that. What media can do is perpetuate stereotypes about women, and that continues the idea that some people believe things are true instead of just assumed. In closing, the biggest challenge for feminism is that in order to get true equality, we need to recognize the things that are different about men and women without neglecting that the sexes have far more in common than traditional wisdom would have us believe. And I'm not just talking about North America, guys. Gaming's a global thing. We can't just look at it from a North American perspective. And also, feminist videos have to allow for artistic freedom, which means applying different standards than we do to real world social issues. So, if you'd ask me what my personal opinion of these games were, I'd be like, Uncharted's awesome, and Mass Effect's awesome, and Witcher 3 is awesome. I tried the Grand Theft Auto games up until Grand Theft Auto 3, and then I went, I'm not enjoying these. This is just a nerd tax. The overall goal of feminist criticism of video games, or any sort of, social issue-based criticism of video games, is to steer developers in the right direction, not crucify them for alleged thought crimes. All right. Okay. Please, now, here's my entreaty, okay? Please, the otter's begging. Help me, guys, here. Help make this experiment a success, and avoid freaking out because your favorite character got criticized or something hit you in the feels. Again, I made this video because I was asked. And I want to show that gamers can discuss things like this and be open to looking at games a different way. So all I ask is that you think about what I've said instead of rejecting it due to an emotional response. Because we won't get anywhere that way. And I think we're all tired of knee-jerk reactions that just make everyone upset. So again, I'm taking a risk here because I believe in gamers. I believe that gamers are good people who can handle mature discussions. I want to prove the stereotypes about gamers wrong, and I want to help bust through the stupid stigmas that let the mainstream sneer at us, because I don't think they're fair. Will I be disappointed if I'm proven wrong here and everybody freaks out? To be honest, I'll be crushed. But I realized I can't ask the rest of the industry to risk if I don't risk myself. So this is my here goes nothing moment. So I'm counting on you guys. So is the otter. I believe in you guys. One gamer to another, I believe in you guys. And I'm tired of bowing to the idea that gamers can't handle a woman with an opinion.